Good morning, everyone. This is Natalie Mazzola with Realty ONE Group Connect in Norwalk, Connecticut, serving Connecticut. And today, as my guest, I have Manny Gomes with me from Guaranteed Rate Mortgage Company, and we're talking about renovation loans. Good morning.
Good morning. How's it going?
It's going great, thank you. So tell me a little bit about what happens when your clients come to you and they're thinking about buying a house that they want to fix up after they buy it.
I find that oftentimes clients come to me wanting to buy a regular house, then they find there's not much inventory out there, and they run across a house in the perfect area, but there's pink wallpaper everywhere, there's that green tile in the bathrooms, and they just need to make that home updated to meet their current standards. And using a renovation loan is a great way to do it because you're able to actually finance in the cost of rehabbing the property in with the mortgage. So you close on the loan, and we kind of pre-plan how much work is necessary, how much it costs, and roll that into the mortgage so that all the money is available to do the construction to the property.
So do you look at the property when it's how much it's worth in that moment, and then how much it's going to be worth after all the construction is finished?
Yeah, everything is based after the improved value of the property, because the property is worth much less in the current state before the renovation. So we take into consideration what the home would be worth after all the improvements. And the key point there is we have to make sure that someone's not over improving the property. So when the appraiser goes out there, they take a look at what the comparable sales have been closing for, the sales price that they've been closing,
right,
based on what the property will look like once the renovations are completed. So technically it's impossible for someone to over improve it based on the appraised value, because we take that all into consideration when we're obtaining the financing and approving the financing for the loan.
Right, and one thing I always tell my clients as well is that when you're going to buy a home and you're going to fix it up, always fix it up keeping in mind that you're going to sell it one day. You're going to live in it, you're going to love it, but don't over improve. So that's a great tip.
And it's really hard for people to hold back, because every time someone's doing a construction loan, or let's say I have a client that has enough cash to renovate themselves, I always say if you plan on spending $100, make sure you have 120, 130. Because as soon as you start peeling back the layers of the property, you're like, why not do this while we're at it? Because it just makes more sense. So you definitely always want to kind of build in a reserve, whether it's a renovation loan, because we kind of strategically embed in a 10% reserve into the loan, or if you're doing it yourself.
To a pipe that needs to be fixed, something you were unexpected.
Correct.
Renovations always have those, right?
Yes, because you don't know what's behind the sheetrock, right? Once you kind of, like I said, peel back the layers, aka kind of start deconstructing the property, things always pop up, always.
Now, does this take more time to close on than a regular mortgage? Because usually, we give a price, the seller, accepts the bid. We go into, inspections and everything that we go through in a regular real estate transaction. Does this transaction take a longer period of time?
It typically does take a little bit longer, just because there's more moving parts, right? There's already enough people in the process during a regular real estate transaction.
Right.
You have a listing agent, selling agent, right? Listing agent, buyer's agent, attorney for the seller, attorney for the buyer, mortgage person, inspector, appraiser, insurance agent, and there's already a lot of people involved in that transaction. With a renovation loan, now we have a contractor who has to complete paperwork, and contractors typically take a while to return paperwork. We have to have a consultant for the bank to go out to the property to make sure that the work that we're doing is sufficient to meet local standards and bank standards, and that takes time. So depending on how fast that happens, the contractor goes out there, the buyer and the contractor come to terms with what the work they're looking to do will be and the cost, and then the inspector goes out there. That could be a 2-week thing, it could be a 3-week thing. So that typically will add 2 to 3 weeks to a normal transaction. But right now, the normal transaction is closing in less than 30 days. So closing on a renovation in 45 days, which is the historic norm, is not unheard of at all. So it adds a little bit of time, but it's not like a 3 or 4 month event. It's really 2 months or less.
Right. And when you're presenting this as an offer to the seller's agent and to the seller, you have to keep in mind that the person, you may be buying their house, they may love the house exactly the way it is. They had their kids in that house, and being a baby boomer, we love our house, and when people walk in, they go, oh, I remember when everyone had a hutch in their den, you know, their dining room. So you have to be very mindful also that when you're walking into a house like that, like I always tell my clients, really don't say anything inside the house, you know, when you're critiquing what you like and what you don't like. But you have to be very mindful. On the other side, you're thinking about renovating a house that someone may have loved for over 30 years, you know.
That's absolutely true. The house I live in, the original owners bought a condo in the same town, and when I moved in and started doing work to it, I noticed a car driving by every Sunday, right? So they would go to church because they're an elderly couple and swing by. And one day I was just like, this car keeps on like stopping by, and they do that slow drive by, right? It's not like they're speeding through the road. They stop and look. And one day I just waved them. I'm like, hey, it's like I've seen you driving around multiple times, and I invite them in. They're looking at the work. The wife was just like, oh my God, this is great what you're doing. Her husband, who did a lot of the work previously to the home, you know, put on addition, did everything like that. He saw me tearing apart the fireplace to reconstruct it, and he just looked sad, right? But so that is 100% true. There's an emotional attachment to the property. So you have to be mindful as the buyer when you have a seller with emotional attachment. They really want a family to be there long term.
That's right.
Right. And this couple, I've been in the house 12 years. They popped in every year. They go to Florida in the winter. I'm like one of the first stops when they come back in the spring.
That's great. And that's great to have that kind of connection, you know. And they do want the house to be loved by somebody else. They really do. And we always want to feel like we are giving it to the next generation to take care of it. So that's just one other thing. So what else can you tell us about renovation loans that we have to be prepared for as a buyer?
Well, it's really having an exit strategy with the renovation loan as well, because typically when you do a renovation loan, you're putting down a little less money, the house is going to be worth more. So having the ability to refinance in the future and lower your mortgage payment is key. So it's really being mindful of your credit and how much you're spending for the first year on your property, because most people that enter into a renovation loan do refinance out of it because they want to get rid of the mortgage insurance. And renovation loans are really, really attractive when you're looking at a foreclosed property. Foreclosed properties typically go under market value. So if you buy a foreclosed property, which typically does need a little bit more, let's call it love / work than a regular home, it's a great way to build equity quickly and secure a future down payment for the next property, right? If you're a first-time home buyer, pick up a foreclosure, fix it up, build this immediate equity, live in there for 3, 4 years, 5 years until you're ready to transition to another property. That's a great way to build up that down payment towards the next property. It really is.
It is a great idea. You have to kind of have the stomach for it, okay? So you have to have patience, and you have to be willing to want to do that kind of work. Some people go in and they're do-it-yourselfers, they love it.
And you can't be a DIYer with a renovation loan. You have to have a licensed contractor.
Excellent to know. So that's a very important point. And even things down to painting, like what if you want to have everyone do the sheetrocking and taping, you do all the painting? Can you do that part?
The painting has to be done by the contractor.
So everything by the contractor.
Everything has to be done by the contractor. That is necessary to get the home to the bank standards, right? So now if you wanted to do if the house has trim, but you hate the trim, then you're like, hey, I'm handy, I can do the trim myself. You just don't put that into the work bid, and you just do the trim yourself afterwards, as for example. If there's a room that you're not ready to do the flooring, and you want to do the flooring yourself, but there's flooring that is existing, but just older and maybe not the color you want, that's something you can do yourself that you just kind of keep it out of the bid for the contractor work. So you could cherry pick what you want to do, as long as it's not necessary for bank standards. Kind of painting is necessary for bank standards.
Okay. Have you ever seen anybody move into the house and renovate? Or do they usually don't do anything until the house is finished and then they move in?
Well, it really depends on the scope of work, right?
Okay, sure.
If it's a gut job, I don't think anyone wants to live in that environment, because it's not healthy with the dust and everything like that. But if it's something simple like broken pipes, or doing the roof, or kind of replacing the furnace or the HVAC, then you can live in a house at the same time, at that point, right? Because it's a little easier. You can move in, the roof's being done, it's not really, it's loud, you hear the banging, but it's not impacting your day-to-day with the dust and with you know, not having a kitchen or a bath that's functioning and usable.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for spending time with me today and talking about renovation loans. Manny's going to be back with us to talk about a lot of other things, and this is great information. If you have any questions, you can please like and subscribe, and his link will be in the description. So thank you very much again, and you have a great day.
Thank you.